I'm Stephen Aquario, the Executive Director of the New York State Association of Counties. This year, we're celebrating our centennial year of service. That's 100 years of service to county governments across the state of New York. Congratulations on your election or appointment, and welcome to county government. If this is your first visit to county government, welcome. If this is a return visit for you, welcome back. You're joining a long and proud tradition of local leadership, one that delivers vital services, managing complex responsibilities, and helps shape the future of our communities. You know, when you stop and take a look and think about the role of county government, it's massive, it's vast. You may not know so much about what counties do. I encourage you to look under the hood and look at what your county does. It provides services for our older adults through the aging department. In some instances, it runs airports, whether it's a general aviation airport or a commercial service airport. It has a budget department which collects taxes and provides the necessary resources to provide county services. It's connected to a community college in one way or another. It has an economic development function. It provides emergency management, emergency services, employment and training, protects the environment, provides public health services, has a law department, the county attorney's office. It provides mental health, the DMV in many instances. In some areas, it provides nursing home assistance. It has a planning and an economic development role. It provides services to prosecute those who may have committed crimes, defends those who have no resources for counsel, and also has a probation function to monitor those that are released back into society. It maintains a jail, and it also provides road patrol through the sheriff's department. It has a highway department which provides bridges, maintains our bridges and roads and culverts and guide rails, and also maintains many miles of local roads. It has a real property tax function, a risk management. It provides landfills, veteran services, weights and measures to make sure a gallon of gas is actually a gallon of gas. Yes, folks, that's just some of what the counties of New York are responsible for. County government is truly where policy meets people. It's where decisions about public safety, public health, infrastructure, human services, economic development have a direct impact on the daily lives of New Yorkers. This training today will introduce you to the foundational structures. Not all counties are created the same way. Many have different foundational structures. It provides a snapshot of the state's constitution and how local governments are protected. It goes over an overview of some of the state policies that we are required to deliver at the local level and partnerships that define county governments in New York State. I truly believe that you'll gain insight into your new role and responsibility, the functions of county departments, and the relationships between the counties, the towns, the cities and villages, the state of New York, and of course, our federal government. Our goal is to equip you with the information and the perspective you need to make informed decisions to help you effectively serve the people who have placed their trust in you. Again, I want to thank you for taking the time to serve the public. Thank you for your commitment to public service. Let's begin this journey into the understanding the essential framework of county government in New York. I'd like to please welcome NYSEC's Deputy Director, Mark Levine, to present today's training program. Mark.
My name is Mark Levine. I'm the Deputy Director of your New York State Association of Counties. It's my pleasure today to welcome you to the family of the New York State Association of Counties. You are joining a group of thousands of county elected and appointed officials from across the state, and we are your staff at the association, and we're pleased to present to you today Foundations of County Government. I am joined today by NYSEC Counsel Patrick Cummings. Patrick.
Thanks, Mark. Hey, everybody. Yeah, Pat Cummings, counsel at NISAC. As Mark said, everyone on this call, the county official, use us as a resource. We all have our own lanes here. I work mostly with county attorneys, DAs, public defenders, all court matters, county clerks. All that said, we appreciate get calls from anybody. Know that our role here is really informational and to help you do a better, form better and more efficient county government. That's our role. And just so you don't feel like you're on an island, we are here for you. So to answer any questions, obviously we're going over foundations and the structure of how counties are formed and their powers today. But on anything, local laws or any kind of challenge you have in your county, please reach out to us. We work for you.
The first counties in New York were created in 1685 by King James II in the Dungan Laws. We have these Dungan Laws, a replica of these Dungan Laws hanging in our office.
Yeah, so what are these, right? It's just like, to get power, you have to be given power. Back in that time, England was our ruler. England they formed counties under this Dungan Charter, Dungan Law. What's fascinating about this is, as Mark said, we have a replica in our office. The way we got the replica is this is in the county clerk's office in Albany. Just like any document, legal document, you're going to need to go back and find, real property rights and how things happen. Counties, we do, as I think Steve mentioned, we do so much. One of the main things we do is we hold the records. And so for all your counties out there, you'll be fascinated to see if you ever want to go back and look historically at records, what the county clerk, what your county historian has. Again, this is still filed here. Many of your counties are starting to put things over the computer to make sure that we're maintaining these forever. We've had some counties battling floods and things, and it protects against that. But it's one of the main functions we do. It's a fascinating document. But this is the start of it. This is how we started getting our powers.
And so, what were the powers, and why were we created by the king over in England across the pond? So, we were the Dungan Laws created 12 counties and created the office of the sheriff in each county. What else were we charged with doing at the time? We were also charged with collecting taxes on behalf of the colony and on behalf of the king. We were charged with surveying the land and keeping records of property owners at the time. The Dungan Laws created a legislative body of freeholders to be elected in each county. It created the office of the sheriff to uphold public safety in the colony in those counties when we were created. It also created a body or an individual that would help establish and maintain the roadways at the time. Next. So here are the counties that were first created: Albany, Kings, Richmond, New York, Suffolk, Dukes, Orange, Ulster, Dutchess, Queens, Westchester. And you'll see some that are no longer counties. That's Cornwall and Dukes. And those counties were separated from New York after some time, and one was given to Massachusetts, the colony of Massachusetts, and another the colony of Vermont. Now we're going to talk about the Constitution, and I'm going to turn this first section over to Patrick. Patrick.
Thanks, Mark. So the New York State Constitution, all states are sovereign, but sovereign to a point. The federal government can preempt when there's conflicts under federal supremacy clauses, laws. But that said, state sovereignty allows states to create their own constitution. Ours was created on April 20th, 1777. It was then replaced in large parts by one was amended in 1821. then again in 1846. And then the last major change we see is in 1938. And I'll explain what happened and why in a moment. So what is, sorry.
So just a note here. We were created in Dungan's Law, and then 100 years later, the state of New York came into being and the Constitution was created. So one of the things we like to say around here is that we were here before the state of New York. And that's an important point, at least it is for us.
Thanks, Mark. So what is the New York State Constitution? Just think of it as, it's just one big law. It's broken up into different articles, but it is a big law that controls everything in New York. It's going to trump any other local state law, but it's dozens and dozens of pages, but ultimately it's one big law. It does have some policy in it, right? There's I think those in the Adirondacks, there's for wild protections, that's in the state constitution. There's for public employees, there's sections that talk about policy-wise civil service and public employee rights and operation to that. But what it does on the most part is it's a structure and power of the state legislature, executive, and judiciary. And it tells, it's the basis of state law that grants them these powers, and then how the structure there within the governor exists, and how the budget will be put together, and how the state legislature interacts with them, and then what the judiciary does. There's also, we'll talk about in a later slide, protections for home rule and local governments and your towns and cities, but know that these are all powers granted by the state to us later on. The basic structure for the Constitution has remained unchanged for over a century. Like I said, the 1930s was the last time that it had any major changes. However, it can be amended through state legislation and but followed by a voter referendum. So what does that mean? You can change the state constitution, anything in there, if the state legislature passes a law and then in a following session passes the identical law again, so they need to pass it twice, and then it goes out to the vote to the people to vote yes or no. It's got to be over 50% of the voters saying yes, and then the Constitution is changed. You'll see this every year or so on the ballot, usually in the back of the ballot for changes, and they're usually they're major issues, but it'll be one change at a time. It's not sweeping reform to the Constitution itself. There is another way to change the state constitution. It's called the action of the state constitution convention. Within the Constitution itself, there is a requirement that every 20 years it's presented to the voters of New York. They have to be asked on the ballot, do you want to hold a convention to revise the Constitution? If the voters say yes, and over 50% say yes, the state is required to hold this convention, and that's where you can have sweeping change. And again, last time that happened, sweeping change in the 1930s. Or you can just you can have minor changes, and that also gets brought up. This happens this question in 2017. The voters said no. This will happen again in 2037. But just know when this happens. What happens is there are delegates throughout the state that are paid full salaries to get together, and they give recommendations on what should be put up for changes. Some of these, and this worked in the past. In the 1890s, this is how the SUNY system got established. This is when Forever Wild was put up. This is when civil service for merit-based testing got put together. This is all based on a constitutional convention and their ideas. They put it up to the people and they voted yes. This can be done either on individual, so they could put up civil service merit for yes or no, or then Forever Wild yes or no, and does get voted up or down individually, or the convention can agree to say, we're going to put this all up in one vote. And I'll give you an example. In 1967, they had 4 major reforms that ultimately got rejected. But it'd be interesting to see if these were put up individually. I think some of these would have passed. And it was independent redistricting for voting, public funding for private schools, a voting age of 18, which later on passed, but ultimately was knocked down here because it was put in a group, and Medicaid paid for by the state, not counties, and paid in full. This was all put up together. This is something that you're a member of NYSEC, we always fight for. Unfortunately, that was rejected by the voters because it was put as a group vote. The Bill of Rights for local governments. This is Article 9 within the Constitution. This is what gives us some structure, some powers. These powers are all often challenged, and so they get redefined by our understanding of them by the judiciary. But know that there are a place for you to go, Article 9 of the Constitution, for the Bill of Rights of local governments. So things that are required. Every local government shall have an elected legislative body. Mark's going to talk about different structures later on. We'll have a lot of ways we can change county government. But one thing we can't change is we still need to have an elected body. We can't run a county with just appointed officers. We need to have an election that can be, again, Mark will talk about different forms, but you need to have that in some manner. No local government can be annexed without approval of the voters through referendum. This is an important one. You've seen we have thousands of local governments in the state of New York. What this protection is ultimately you can't get rid of a village, town, city, county without this going to the people that it affects the most, the residents there. They can't. A village cannot be swallowed by a town or county and be annexed unless the voters themselves within that jurisdiction agree. So the state legislature can pass a law all they want unilaterally to say we want to get rid of village X. They cannot because there's a state constitutional protection. It needs to go through a referendum. The power to apportion costs of government services. This gives us taxing authority. Okay, this doesn't mean that that's a huge power that local governments have. We can tax for services and fees for services. But there are guardrails the state puts on this. We do have, again, local law authority to approve or even increase these at times. Oftentimes, especially like sales tax, it's locked at 3% unless you get state approval. But you do have the ability to apportion costs and collect on those and with enforcement. And then we can request, and later on we'll point that the state has to allow some authorization to form different types of county government. This is what makes counties interesting. Right? We are a diverse state. We've got diverse needs, and we have to provide services for mostly state and federal services. But how we are organized to do that best, we do have a lot of flexibility, and we can get state laws that allow us to change our form of government. And that's why later in this program we're going to see our 57 counties, and then also with New York City, very different forms of government. And there's a reason why. There's a method to the madness. The state saw that. The Constitution saw that. We need to be able to change the forms and meet the needs of our residents. More protections in the Bill of Rights for local governments. All local offices not in the Constitution are elected or appointed by officials of local government. So what does this mean? First, there are 3 constitutionally protected county officials, and they're by name and because they're in the Constitution, they're locked in. These are positions that have to remain in counties unless the Constitution is changed. That's your sheriff, your county clerk, and your district attorney. It's also important to note those are, because they're constitutional officers, those are the only offices when they're vacated that this is appointed by it first goes to the ability for the governor to reappoint if that office gets vacated until the next election. And that's again because they're constitutional officers. The rest are local government officers, and these common, your legislature, your treasurer, your coroner, these are elected officials. And when there's a vacancy there, this is appointed then by, typically, unless your charter says something different, the legislative body. might be your county executive, again, depending on, we'll talk about charter counties later, but this is a local, now that office is open because it's vacated. This will now be appointed by the local officials. There is one exception to that we've learned about. This has happened 3 to 4 times in the past year. You need that body to appoint needs to have a quorum to actually make a motion. So here's a real life example. If you have a 5-person legislative board and 3 resign at the same time, 3 vacate seats, the other 2 can't make that appointment because they can't form. You need 3 in that situation to form a quorum to then make that appointment. So then that's in the unique situation where even that local position that's not a constitutional officer will be appointed by the governor. If you're ever in these kind of situations, call NYSAC. We can help you out. We are a bridge to the state. Sometimes the governor just wants a name of on these kind of positions. They just want what's best locally. We'll connect you to the right persons to get that moving and help out. We have the power of eminent domain. We can take property. It's a long, hard process, but we actually, when need be, whether it be putting a road in or some kind of service where you might need a building, there is the ability to take private property and make it public property, eminent domain. Local governments can act jointly as authorized by the legislature. This is huge. This is your right under the Constitution. This is your ability to work together. Again, this beginning we said you're not on an island. You're not on an island necessarily with services either. You can work together with counties, towns. Shared services are a huge benefit, and the more you can do together, it can often become wins, and you have that ability protected in the Constitution. Again, there's restrictions and guardrails on that, but you do have that power. And then the state legislature must adopt a statute of local governments. So again, giving you just saying that you'll have the ability to do certain things, and the state has to allow that, as well as certainly do different forms of government.
So the next slide here is the state legislature. The Constitution empowers the state legislature to mandate programs and costs on units of local government, including counties. So what does that mean? Let me just give you some numbers here. $14 billion. That's the total amount of county taxes that are used to pay for state programs each year. So that is what the state legislature requires or annually requires counties to provide to them. Included in that $14 billion is $7.6 billion that are paid by counties for the state's Medicaid program by the 57 counties in New York City. That is more than all other counties in the nation combined. We pay $7.6 billion a year that's taken out of the county accounts every week. This drives New York's nation-leading non-school property tax burden. A further example of this is that 90% of the county property tax levy is dedicated to paying for state and federal mandated programs and services. That leaves little local control over spending of the county dollars. The state legislature and the courts will remind us of this empowerment that they have each and every year or from time to time, and including and importantly during each state budget cycle. And we will communicate, NYSAC will communicate to you how the state budget, when it is proposed in January, will impact counties. And each and every year, there are aspects of the state budget that do impact counties with regard to state mandated programs and services.
Yeah, Mark mentioned the 90%. There's a great campaign and then just education that Mark and the team put together a few years back, but it's up on our website, called 9 for 90. I highly suggest you go to our website and get familiar with that if you're not already. I mean, it's what Mark's talking about is the way the state's set up is that the state requires services, but if you look at the way the state of New York is set up, it is the counties that are actually performing these services. We are large part federal, but mostly state services, and we are, I hate to use the term, sometimes considered agents of the state and we are required to perform these duties. And it's it's an amazing effort, and it's 90% of your levy and your taxes are used to do these. So that leaves 10% for voluntary, let's call them, services, and it's not much play on what you can do with the rest of your funding. It really comes down to a few offices like your but needed, your Meals on Wheels, your veteran services. These are not state mandates, and that's some of them, but these are obviously needed in your local government. You've got to do that with your rest of your 10%. And to highlight our relationship with the state and how much we do boots on the ground, if you look at every department in the state, we have a corresponding department in our counties that just deal with implementing those services. Or on the state, where the real property, go right to the real property directors. Docs with the state, they oversee and tell the jails how the local jails how they have to operate. Public health to our county health. Indigent legal services to our public defenders. On deep state DMV to our local DMV. We are doing the services for the state, and they empower us to, but we are the ones, we're the boots on the ground.
Next.
So public employee pension system. This is something that all counties should be aware of. All county officials should be aware of. This is also a constitutional protection. Your employees are entitled to be in the local government, state government, into the New York State public employee pension system. You're in one of the four listed here. Most county members listening to us today are going to be in the second bullet. You're going to be in the New York State local retirement system. They're all set up very similarly and operated by the state. It's tier 1 through 6, depending on when that employee was hired by the county. It really, I mean, there's different benefits to it, but if you look at it, it's the older ones, tier 1, going all the way up to tier 6. It's more generous looking back benefits, but it's still these are good benefits that are guaranteed. That are guaranteed by the state constitution. There is something to be aware of on this. It's a huge cost to counties in a lot of ways. The comptroller operates this though too, and the payments we put in, they invest in the stock market. 40 to 60% the state comptroller puts into the stock market. The other remaining they put in bonds and hedge funds. So when the stock market goes up or down, counties pay more or less accordingly. So it's when the economy is doing well, we pay less into the system. When the economy is not doing well, as far as the stock market, we're going to be paying more. Next. So when I said that there's a protection in the Constitution, if you read this, the benefits of which shall not be diminished or impaired. What does this mean? There's often talk of these pension costs are a lot. Can we do anything about it? The question comes down to what is a pension? Is a pension an earned benefit or is it a future benefit? If Pat Cummings, who worked for the county government, I put some payments in, the county paid on that behalf, but I'm not going to be seeing that pension payment for 30 years. Is that something I already earned and so therefore I'm entitled to it? Or is that something the state or the county will be paying and that could be potentially taken away? The way the courts in New York State so far look at this as an earned benefit. Once you're in, you're in. This can't be taken away. There's always a caveat to everything. There was a constitutional amendment in 2018. There can be, if any official, public official, gets a felony conviction, not accusation, conviction of a public officer, and it's related to official duties, the DA or the AG can make a recommendation, and then ultimately the court can make a ruling to forfeit that pension. So it's a rare case. I think we've only seen it once or twice in the state. But what we're talking about typically is conviction of, let's say, fraud, stealing public funds, in their official capacity. That's a potential where a pension is not necessarily protected. But in all other cases, these are protected assets to the public employee. The consolidated laws relating to county government. All right, so now we're getting away from the state constitution. What other laws govern us? These are state laws that we just want you to be aware of. That are the state passes thousands of laws every year. Thousands of laws, sometimes hundreds and thousands, not 100,000, hundreds or thousands that can impact even county government directly or indirectly. When these get passed, they get consolidated into different sections to define these laws. We want to list these out just so you know when you see these areas where to look, even start looking in the law. Well, what governs this and why? And again, now these are just laws, not the state constitution. So these can all be changed. The difference being that they don't go to referendum the people. The state legislature can change this within a session, and then approval of the governor. So first, civil service law. That's one section. That's that you may look if you're dealing with any kind of local civil service administration duties. Taylor law, dealing with union negotiations. That you'll find that in a section called civil service law. Election law impacts many of you here. We run elections on the counties, but even how petitions need to happen, times, place, early voting, this is all under election law. Eminent domain procedure law, and I'll even tie in highway law to this. So as we mentioned earlier, you have the power of eminent domain. We also operate between towns and counties, we operate the vast majority of roads throughout the state of New York. And this is a huge, huge function that we do. And how we do it, it can be found in these two different laws. When I mentioned eminent domain with highway law, you might run into a issue where you need to say there's too much traffic flow in one area and you want to make another road connecting into that to cut down on some of the traffic. You might need to use your eminent domain laws to take and your highway law to figure out how we're going to do this curb cut into this road. And now you might be dealing with who owns it, the town, the property owner, the county, and it can become messy. Something as easy as that, it's a difficult thing. These are the areas where you're going to be looking.
On highway law, just Patrick just said we maintain most of the roadway. It's 87%. Local highway departments maintain 87% of New York's 110 miles of roads and over 50% of the state's 18,000 bridges. We receive just a small fraction of state transportation revenues to maintain those roads. So state highway law, it impacts the way we operate our DPWs and highway departments at the county level.
Public officers law. Again, this is state law, but controlling how we operate. So official oaths, especially for you newly electeds there, please make sure you get your oaths in in January and then get those filed. This is pretty draconian law that if not done properly, your seat could even be vacated. So just seems like just a procedural thing, but that's how you find out how oaths are done and filed. There's also FOIL law in there. So what we're talking about are documents that the public can ask for that we have to turn over because these are public documents, and it governs how, what types, how quickly the process that we need to turn that over. Open meetings law, how you conduct your meetings, when a meeting needs to be open to the public, how much notice you need to give, when the size of the space that you need to provide. These are all going to be found in public officers law. Retirement Social Security law, again, we talked about pensions, a lot of like how to file, when to file before retirement, and then to get the pension is within there. Local finance law on how much debt we can go into, how we can borrow money for projects. Taxing law, we have the constitutional protection of taxing, but under tax law will tell us exactly how much authority and when. If you need to go over 3% sales tax, I think only 2 counties right now, 2 or 3 are at 3%. Many have asked to go over at 4, sometimes even up to 5% local taxing for sales tax. That needs to go you need state authority to get that, and that's under the tax law, and to get that kind of approval to go over 3%. And also, if you want hotel motel bed tax, that's state approval under tax law. Next, then we do vehicle and traffic law, your DAs, and your public defenders, on authority and authorization for protecting our roadways and making sure they're safe driving, as well as that's where our DMVs, where county clerks work. Volunteer firefighter benefit law is, again, another state law, and workers' comp law. These are all sections that you'll probably at some point be coming across in your career as a county official, and these are the sections to find these. The last big one we want to talk about, I want to talk about, is general municipal law. This is another section of law that you're going to come across. State law. This is dealing a lot with procurement. Procurement gets very difficult to understand how and when we need to purchase things, what needs to go out to bid, when we can piggyback on other contracts. This is all be found under general municipal law. There's also, it's a larger section. There's things to deal with. I get a lot of these kind of questions in, and they can be answered a lot in general municipal law of conflicts, county conflicts of office. So when and how someone, you're always going to be asked to be wearing two hats. We've arrived being asked to do more with less. So how can one hold multiple positions? There's state law on when and how we can do that. On the most part, by the way, on that question, the first question should always be, am I my own boss? That's always the no-no. If you are anyway, you probably can't do it. Meaning, if you're going to set your salary, or you can give yourself benefits in one position to another, that's typically seen as a conflict, and you can't do it. Obviously, the county legislature is going to set the salary of the legislature, so it's, there sounds like a contradiction there. Typically, the way that's seen is what they're doing when they're setting salary is for a future office holder. So you're not giving that raise or the monetary change whilst sitting in office. It's to a future elected office. So that's how that works.
So these are the laws that drive most of the way that today's counties are organized. Next. The county law. The county law, first of all, you should know the county law assumes that counties are comprised of boards of supervisors. This was, which was in 1938, all counties were boards of supervisors except for the city of New York. It makes no provision for an elected executive. It vests all authority in a board of supervisors, and it gives us all our powers exercised through local law or resolution. And it says that we must elect a chair to which it may delegate administrative duties on its behalf.
Yeah, just to know off the top, again, for county laws, going back one slide, it's a misnomer. This is state law. It's just called the county law. It's literally in state law called the county law. And it's just, again, tells, before we change any kind of form of government, it gave a basic structure to a lot of very important positions and understanding their powers and duties of board of supervisors, as well as even, county attorney is listed in there, county treasurer, and what they can and cannot do, the powers they have. And then those can be changes we'll talk about later on, but this is the starting point of your original county structure.
The municipal home rule law delineates powers and restrictions on the adoption and amendment of local laws. It grants authority to set powers, duties, qualifications of its officers and employees. It calls for the adoption of laws regarding term, composition, and apportionment of legislative body. It gives us the power to adopt or amend a county charter.
Yep, and we're going to talk about county charters in 1 second, but I do want to touch on something Mark said. This is where we're given the power of local law in state constitution. We also have what we can do with these local laws. It's a huge power. It's it's what makes a county county in a lot of ways to me is you can change the laws quite literally within your county. Your legislature can, and if you're with the county executive with approval of them, and you can do so many things here. What you ultimately, I get the question a lot of like, what can and can't we do with local laws? As long as the state will preempt us, and if it's a matter of state concern, they can preempt us. But other than that, if the state hasn't spoken on an issue and it's impacting, you know, the health, the public safety, almost anything within your county, you can change local laws within your borders to better life for your residents. And it's a powerful tool. Now, granted, the state has spoken with a lot of their state laws. We mentioned they passed thousands of laws every year, so, and we can't preempt those locally. But with, you know, changing technology and new things where state hasn't spoken on things, this is a huge chance for counties to step up and make change. You know, when cell phones were first brought up and there were car accidents, it was counties that passed restrictions and made penalties on driving while talking on cell phones. And then, you know, we take the lead in those kind of areas, and it's a huge function and important.
This is also where we see a little bit of the push and pull between county governments and local governments in the state of New York, because as we've mentioned, the state is empowered to mandate programs and costs on units of local government, including counties, but we also have home rule. So this is where we sometimes come to a head with the state legislature and the state government, where we want to do something, but the state preempts us from doing so. And this is a pretty constant tug and pull between county leaders and the state of New York.
Correct. So Mark mentioned county charter law and what next, John? Mark mentioned county charter law. And so what is that? This is again a state law that governs how we can make charters, but this is also a guarantee in the state constitution. But this puts just the restrictions or the rules on what we can and can't do. But this is it empowers us to change with sweeping authority of how county governments are structured. So the one thing, and we talked about this with state constitution, we still have to have a legislative body. And so you can have, you know, county legislature by districts or your town supervisors, that still needs to remain. But this is when you'll see multiple counties that Mark will talk about later, how we get county executive structures, or we'll get this is a common way we'll see county admins come in that work for the legislature. It is, think of your county charter law like the state constitution is to the state, the county charter is to the county. It can have some policy and some changes, but overall it's really how your county is going to be organized and structured and move going forward. Adopting a charter. So there's multiple ways to do this, but typically this is done by a resolution of the legislative body itself. And then they make a motion, and then they can draft and get a committee to come up with what do we want to do. A charter commission typically is put together. What do we want to do? How many changes do we want to make? But this also can be done by a petition of voters. Know that they can force this on a county to at least consider. But ultimately, the county the legislature needs to approve this, and then it needs to go out to a referendum to the people and to approve it. You can't make these changes, especially when you're talking about changing a lot of our elected officials. And so if you're ever going to take in a local area a take or give a power to an elected official, it can be done through this process, but you need a referendum. You need the people to approve. Sometimes you'll see an elected treasurer become an appointed treasurer. That can't happen without a referendum. A charter is one way that can occur. It can be large sweeping change, And we're going to change the structure of that and then have a lot of different changes. And the people can see the entire document, the entire charter, and agree to approve that. But then there can be amendments to that, much like the state constitution. Again, when it's dealing with change of powers and duties of structure that's involving especially elected officials, needs to go out to a referendum of the people. And then, so these different, and we're going to go into county organization now, these different, a lot of these are done through charter change themselves.
Back one, Jeanette, please. So New York's 57 counties outside of the city of New York have generally adopted one of three methods of organization. Charter counties with an elected executive or appointed administrative official, counties with an appointed administrator or manager, and counties organized under county law operating under the auspices of a county legislative body. Next. We have 23 counties that have adopted county charters, 18 of which currently have an office of county executive who is elected in a countywide general election. The remaining 5 counties have adopted county charters but have taken different approaches to county administration. We have 16 counties remain boards of supervisors, 40 counties have a county legislature, and 1 county has a board of representatives. So what's in a name? As Patrick noted, county law requires us to have boards,
Board supervisors, county legislators, or representatives. So you can have multiple names of those of your board, but ultimately they serve the similar function. They're elected, and then they get to do budget. They control local laws and resolutions including even the county budget.
Okay. So in boards of supervisor counties, cities may elect at-large supervisors who are not town supervisors, but sit on the county board. But generally, most boards of supervisors are comprised of the town supervisors. So they serve as their town official as well as a county legislative body. On Tuesday, they could be working or meeting with their county board, but all the other days of the week, they serve as their town supervisor. It's the chief elected official of the town government and represents the area within, or they represent an area within a city. The votes are weighted vote according to the relative share of the county population. Next. In terms of the legislator or representative, the legislator or representative, they're the same. They have the same requirements. They have the same powers on their boards of the county boards. They represent a district with an equal share of county population in charter counties. They fulfill the one person, one vote requirements, all cast an equal vote. The county representative, for those on the call, Otsego County has a board of representatives. All the other counties have a county legislature or a board of legislators. How are they the same? All serve as the legislative body of the county. They're all empowered to enact or repeal laws and resolutions. They make appropriations, they levy taxes, and incur debt. They pass a budget every year. And, we're at the end of December now, and most counties across the state have enacted their 2026 budgets or the following year's budgets. Some will wait till almost the end of December to pass their coming year's spending plan. They're empowered to adopt rules and regulations for its conduct and procedures, and that usually takes place in the organizational meeting that happens in January of each year. 18 of our counties have county charters with an elected executive that goes before the voters in November. It's a countywide election. These elected executives have the power to veto actions of their county legislature. The executive appoints all department heads and with confirmation of the legislature. They manage the internal operations of all departments. They serve as the chief budget officer of the county, and they're empowered again to veto actions of the legislative bodies should they deem that warranted.
Yeah, in this structure, Mark, think of it, it almost gets to like a state structure. Your county executive is similar to the governor in that they do, you know, they oversee the departments, and so they've got the management piece, but like the governor, they also have some say in the legislative process. So your non-county executive counties, the legislature will just pass a local law, pass a resolution, and through the chair, they approve that. And your county, your county executive counties, the legislature will pass a local law or resolution, and then pending approval, the veto power of the county executive, much like a governor has. So it's a little bit different form of process even on their powers and how they operate.
So counties with appointed administrative officials. We have 25 counties now that have created the office of county administrator. So that's updated now. It says 24, but there's actually 25. We have 10 counties that have created a county manager. 5 of the counties have created this position through county charter. The other counties have created this through local law.
Yeah, think of this. It's very similar to the county executive when they're not elected and they don't have that veto power. So they're really overseeing and help managing the county offices.
Next. So the official is really delegated the administrative function of the legislative body. So they answer to the county board. They're appointed by the legislative body and they serve at its pleasure. Generally, they prepare annual budgets for submission to the legislative body for adoption. They could do this on their own, or they could do this in conjunction with the county budget officer. They oversee the day-to-day operations of a county government. And the legislative administration. So we still have 4 counties that provide administrative operational oversight through the legislative body. The chair is the delegated administrative authority. The body may appoint an administrative assistant to the board chair. These 4 counties tend to have a strong committee system that may be established to provide oversight over specific departments. Under county law, the legislative body is empowered to delegate certain administrative functions to the chair of the board and their committees who oversee county operations.
So changing county structure, we talked about county charters. That's the most common way that can happen. But you can change your structure even without that. You can create a county manager or county admin. As Mark mentioned, they work for the board or the legislature. You can do that by simple local law. You don't need to go to a referendum for that because you're not giving that power over. If you're the board chair, you still, and the board, you have oversight over the department heads. You're just delegating that power to your county manager or your county admin. They're a bridge that works for you through that. So these kind of non-charter counties, you can, by local law, change a lot of the way you operate. But again, last bullet, I do want to point out, you can't do this without for a local for an elected. You can't change their powers or duties without a referendum of the people. So if by way of local law you wanted to establish a manager, but then say that manager then wouldn't have to give back those powers of oversight to the legislature. You couldn't do something like that without a referendum. That's taking away the power that's currently holding to the legislature.
So that's our foundations of county government. Beyond this presentation, we encourage you to download a copy of NYSAC's Practical Guide to Leadership, which is available on our website at www.nysac.org. There that you can find that Practical Guide to Leadership and several other documents that can help you in your service to your communities as a county official. Again, we want to offer our congratulations to you on your election, and we want to welcome you to the family of counties that are represented and served by the New York State Association of Counties. We are here to serve you. Please give us a call if you have any questions. I want to thank you, and I appreciate your service to counties and to the state of New York.